Hello and welcome to the Rugby Gods podcast. I'm John Keenan. No mai haere mai. Today is February 12th and now let's talk some rugby. So this is going to be covering the Six Nations. It's Wednesday, so I'm a little bit late in terms of reviewing it. I was hoping to do that on Monday, but had time issues, just couldn't get it done. So having a full-on focus on the Six Nations, the 2020 Six Nations round 2, giving a review wrap-up of that. Let's just get straight into it. I want to keep this one pretty short, and I also have sort of like a thought experiment, or what could happen in the future with the Six Nations. After we've gone through the games, the reality of this weekend or the weekend just been, and the actual tournament. Maybe we can talk about the tournament's future as well. So let's go through round 2. Basically, 3 games. You had Ireland at home to Wales, Scotland at home to England, and France at home to Italy. I believe my picks for that were, I backed Wales. I didn't really say a margin or anything. I just said, who I thought would win. So I actually backed Wales against Ireland. I backed England, I think, to win big, I think is what I said, over Scotland, in Scotland. And I backed France to win at home, again, comfortably by a fairly big margin, against Italy. So how did that all play out? Well, Ireland beat Wales. So Ireland's 24, Wales 14. Ireland winning at home in Dublin. So didn't pick that one. And I think perhaps that scoreline sort of marginally flat as Wales as well. Bonus point win there for Ireland. So well done, very good. Congratulations. Second game, Scotland v England. It was England 13, Scotland 6 away. So England did win that game, but I thought they were going to win it by a considerable margin, maybe to make a little bit of a statement, backing up from their loss to France the week before. But a fairly dour match, fairly dour result, and England left it pretty late in terms of putting points on the board. So very close, very tight, not really what I expected. I was expecting like a 20 plus point win, something like that, for England. So picked England won, but not the way that I thought, not the response I would have thought. And then the final game on the Sunday from France was France 35, Italy 22. So France winning second week in a row at home, comfortably winning. Left a few points out there. I believe they scored 5 tries in the game, only kicked a couple of conversions. And Italy scored pretty late in it as well to, again, give them perhaps a little bit of respectability in terms of that margin. So I think, the France-Italy, unfortunately, the France-Italy game went pretty much exactly like, 90-95% of the rugby world would have thought. The Ireland winning at home over the Six Nations champs, the Grand Slam champs from last year, Wales. The World Cup semi-finalists. Maybe a little bit surprising, but home advantage is a big thing, right? Maybe just the manner of that win was probably a little bit convincing or a little bit surprising. Certainly was to me. And then on top of that, again, like England beating Scotland, pretty much like what most people would have thought. But again, perhaps the lack of win, or the lack of a convincing win, might have been a little bit of a surprise there. So I think Ireland, outperforming. Certainly in my world, I was thinking Wales might be good enough to get over there and beat Ireland. So Ireland certainly outperforming my expectations, but then actually winning at home and winning well, and getting the bonus point. England's sort of being underwhelming, you'd have to say. I would have thought a much stronger response, a much larger margin, a much more convincing win. So didn't really pick either of those games. I picked England, but I didn't really pick the fashion in which England would win. And then France, Italy, pretty standard. So that's the 3 games. I might just quickly go through the round, have a look at some stats, or not really like too much, like not really like I do for Super Rugby games and or Hurricanes games, but I'll just give a little bit of a look through. So yeah, using the.rugby.com, basically, why not, right? So start with the first game, Ireland v Wales from Aviva Stadium. Referee Romain Poit, Frenchman. Man of the match here was CJ Stander. So yeah, interesting. This is the game I watched the most of. I was sort of going back and forth between a Super Rugby game, the Stormers and Bulls, which was pretty dour, and this game they were sort of going on at the same time, or they overlapped. And I think Ireland Wales was a little bit more of a spectacle, a little bit more interesting. So yeah, I sort of basically went between the two and watched a fair amount of this game. Just a disclaimer: I didn't actually watch the England-Scotland game. It was a bit late for me. I was a bit rugbyed out, a bit tired. It was quite kind of like early in the morning for me. And I was just done for the day in terms of rugby. So yeah, I've only really seen some stats and read around the game. And then the same with France. My Sunday was just not rugby, and I really just thought that what happened was going to happen. So I didn't really watch that one either. Again, just had a look at some stats and followed around the game with some reports. So really only really talking about this Ireland Wales game with any real authority. Otherwise, I'm just like picking on scores, picking on a few stats. So yeah, I'll just recap that or start again. So Ireland v Wales from Aviva. Romain Poit was the referee, Frenchman. 24-14 to Ireland, and it was 12-7 to Ireland at half time. If we just scroll down, they make it a little bit hard to find the actual summary. But for Ireland, there was tries to Lamar, 18th minute, Furlong, 31st minute, Van der Fleer, I believe it is, 46th minute, and Conway right at the finish, the 74th minute. And then for Wales, there was tries to Williams in the 26th minute and to Brick in the 79th. A bit of a consolation try there at the end for Wales. Also, obviously, in that second half, there was I think you'd have to say a pretty contentious, try no try decision. I believe it was Headley Parks, I think it was, or it was an inside centre, inside centre. Sorry, I don't have the highlights or don't have it in front of me, but I believe it was Headley Parks. Basically, crashed over, and they said he lost the ball in the try scoring movement. Which, to be honest, like 50-50 coin toss as a neutral there. I could agree with the refereeing decision. I could also look at that and say, definitely seen that kind of try awarded, many times. So, yeah, it basically just comes down to, is the refereeing team, is the referee in charge? Are they, initially positive on the play, or are they initially negative? And in that situation, they were essentially initially negative, and there wasn't anything clear and obvious to overturn that decision and say no try. It certainly isn't a clean, it's not a clean dot down for sure. But in rugby, unless I'm missing a rule or something has changed in the last year or 2 years, you don't need a lot of downward pressure with the ball. You essentially just need hand touching ball touching line, or ball over line touching ground. And I've just seen it time and time again. Maybe it's a difference between north and south, or northern and southern hemispheres, but I have definitely seen many Super Rugby and or Rugby Championship tries given basically exactly the same as what wasn't given in that Welsh game. And I think that would have been, it certainly would have made the game a lot more interesting, because, that would have been Wales' second try. They would have been a lot more in the game with a far more time left on the clock. So, it was quite a big call. But, to be honest, I didn't really have a huge a huge opinion either way on it. Like, I could support the ref. I could have also supported a try being given. Just from the report, it basically does go key moment. It backs me up there. From Six Nations rugby.com, the report, it says key moment with an hour gone, so 60 minutes gone. Wales desperately needed a score to get back into the match and almost had it when Hadley Parkes burst through a gap. He lost the ball in the process of scoring though, and when Ireland won a scrum penalty not long after, 5 metres from their line, hopes of a Welsh comeback evaporated. So the report is pretty happy with it and is not really too contentious. I would say it was pretty much a 50-50 ref call that you could support or disagree with, depending on who you support and how much of a dagger or how important that is to you. But yeah, so I mean that's pretty much the tries, the scores, the halftime score, the tries. Sexton kicked a couple of conversions, so 2 from 4. Bigger and Halfpenny got a couple of conversions, and there was a yellow card to Stander in the 78th minute. I didn't actually see the complete end of the game, which I was thinking that there was a yellow card. I thought it might have been Stander, which was a little bit why at the top of this it said man of the match CJ Stander. And it was like, wow, okay. Again, I think it's one of those sort of issues maybe with rugby. It seems like in most professional competitions you award the man of the match around the 75th minute so that you can kind of let the TV audience know, with a minute to go, 2 minutes to go, who's the player of the match, who's the official player of the match. But that does kind of leave you to not being able to award an excellent play perhaps in the last couple of minutes in injury time of a game, which or a bad play, if you will, for example a yellow card. I don't know if you could or should really give a player man of the match if they pick up a yellow card towards the end of a game. But anyways, like I said, I didn't actually see the full game. I didn't see the yellow card awarded at the time, so maybe I'm just talking smack there. But yeah, surprising man of the match Stander and a yellow card in the 78th minute. So let's move on to the second game. So yeah, let's have a quick look there. I've got the summary up, but I don't really want that at the moment. So just gonna scroll up to the top, try and keep it consistent. So yeah, we've got Scotland v England from Murrayfield. Referee was Pascal Gazzare, believe Frenchman again. Sorry for butchering your surname there. Gazzare. Sorry, Pascal. Anyway, we'll go with that. So yes, Scotland v England from Murrayfield. Referee Pascal Gazzare. I'll go with that. 13-6 to England away. Man of the match, Sam Underhill for England. So yeah, a couple of back rowers getting the man of the matches there, and I believe a French back rower might have also got man of the match in the French game. So perhaps 3 man of the matches for the back rowers, or your 6, 7, 8. So yeah, like I said, didn't actually watch the game, just had a quick read around it. I'll just pick out the key moment again, just go on what reporting has said. So key moment, Stuart Hogg will look back and wish he had played that ball far sooner instead of waiting for it to roll back towards his own line. England's chase and pursuit of the kick downfield was too quick and Hogg had to act, pouncing on it to concede a 5-metre line out instead of securing the 22 dropout he wanted. England took advantage with Genge scoring the try that won them the match. So unfortunately for Stuart Hogg, that's sort of 2 key moments that he's sort of on the negative side of back-to-back as Scotland captain. In the first round, he was also dropped the ball in a scoring play, pretty much unopposed, and just textbook error. And again, that was extremely costly in the Scottish match against Ireland. So yeah, back-to-back missed plays or maybe bad plays from Stuart Hogg, the Scottish captain. Unlucky, unfortunate there. So let's just have a look at the scoring. So yeah, just the one try to Genge in the 69th minute. I believe, again, I haven't actually really seen or heard this man's name. I believe it's Prop, I think, right? I might be wrong about that too, but I haven't really heard his name too much. Genge, Genge, just going with Genge, Gegigy, sounds like a J to me, right? Genge. So I tried again, 69th minute, conversion to Farrell, and then 2 penalties to Farrell in the 10th and 76th minute. So, basically England left it to the last 10 to actually score 10 points. On the flip side there, Hastings kicked 2 penalties in the 45th and 77th minute. So a real dogfight, very close, basically 3-3 going into the last 10 minutes when England scored the only try. So like I've said a couple of times, not really the response I thought we would get from England or that they would give, but they got the win, so good luck to them. Means they get back the Calcutta Cup, which I'm sure they care about, the Scotland Island in rivalry game or inter-country game, and played 2 away, 1-1, got a bonus point from the French game too, very late. So you're still in the hunt in terms of what you can do in the Six Nations, right? Final game was again France at home. So France 2 games in a row at home. I had England last week, which was very difficult. Sorry, I'm completely losing the train of thought, unfortunately. Or not losing my train of thought, but the website is just not quite giving me consistency that I got from the first 2 games, but here we go. France v Italy, from Stade Francais, referee Andrew Brace. So the score was 35-22 to France. Man of the match, Gregory Aldrit. Again, I'm pretty sure 3rd back rower to win man of the match this round. Halftime, 23-10 to France. So if we just go down again, I think I'll ignore the key moment. I think it was fairly handled. French handled this fairly efficiently. So let's go through the try scoring. So for France, tries to Thomas, Olivon, Aldrit, Intermac, and Seren. So 5 tries there. A conversion to Intermac, a conversion to Jalabert, and 2 penalties to Intermac. For the scoring there. For the Italians, for Italy, Minozzi, Zani, and Bellini. So 3 tries there. And then 2 conversions for Allen, 25th and 65th. And penalty for Allen in the 28th. So Italy scored 1 late there, scored a couple late actually, but certainly 1 very late. Got a little bit more respectability back perhaps into the scoreline, but efficiently put away, I think. Maybe just a quick shout out for Gregory Aldrit. I'm just going to have a look because I can see some really big numbers from him. So Dupont, the halfback for France, was once again excellent, but number 8, Gregory Aldrit, matched him every step of the way, the hulking 22-year-old fast becoming one of the key men across the championship. All in all, he claimed 118 run meters from a number 8. That's very impressive. Of 19 carries and 15 tackles in defence. I believe there was a try in there somewhere as well, which isn't mentioned. A decisive 74 minutes, that's won the game at France's way. So he scored a try in the 38th minute as well. You'd think that would be important to put in his key moment stats or man of the match stats, but anyways, Northern Hemisphere, right? Wow, that's a massive game, even if it's just perhaps against the lowly Italians. That's a huge game, so perhaps one to look out for the remaining rounds. So those were the 3 games. I think I gave you some picks, and then I kind of reviewed my picks and what was good and what wasn't. Basically, I picked 2 of 3. And I didn't really pick England's sort of dour performance or Scotland's dogged good performance, I guess. 2 from 3 with the picks, but unconvincing England 2nd week in a row was a little bit surprising to me. So that's that. What I want to move on to now though is the Six Nations will take a break for a week, and then they'll come back for round 3 in essentially 2 weeks from now, or a week and a half from now, as I'm doing this on a Wednesday. February 12th is a Wednesday, so no games coming up this weekend. It's a bye week or a week off from the competition, and then they're back at it. It's Saturday week, so a little bit of time off for the players, or back to clubs, whatever they do. I'm not exactly sure what they do there. Do they stay in camp or do they get released? I'm not sure. I don't really care. Sorry. So yeah, Six Nations back in a week and a half or 2 weeks, 2 weekends time. But what I want to do now is talk about the Six Nations, not obviously the results and players of today, but perhaps the future of the tournament. I think it's kind of important to do this, and it's the sort of rugby political stuff that I do kind of love. It's a little bit of intrigue. It's a little bit of Northern Hemisphere versus Southern Hemisphere. There's always rivalry involved there as to who's got the better competition, who's got the better players, blah, blah, blah. We have these crossover times where perhaps the Northern Hemisphere doesn't take their June, now July tours very seriously. And we always have the South or the Southern Hemisphere teams coming up in November, usually heavily fatigued from having started Super Rugby pre-season and or Super Rugby in like January, February, and having to essentially play high level rugby all the way through to November. So they generally come up, have to play 4 games in 4 weeks, and are pretty gas tanked, certainly by game 3, game 4 of that kind of itinerary. So we never really get an absolute like in between World Cups. You never really know how good or how bad the two hemispheres are, just in my opinion. Occasionally I guess maybe you've got an extremely efficient New Zealand team that goes up to the All Blacks go up to the North and do very well, or perhaps previous times it's been South Africa have been good like that too. Or perhaps maybe you have a good touring England team come down, or a good touring Ireland team recently come down and do well. But generally speaking, the North doesn't do well mid-year, and the South doesn't really do that great at the end of the year. And it's the end of season time. Basically, players are just gassed, and they're playing players that are essentially hitting their straps kind of in the middle of their season. So quite unfair, really, in terms of matchups. But that's the way it is. You can't really. It's the same for both teams in terms of, well, it's not the same for both teams, but both teams or both hemispheres kind of get a time in the year where they've got home advantage, and then mid-season advantage rather than end of season advantage. But it does make things really hard to go apples with apples. It's kind of constantly you are comparing apples and oranges kind of thing. So you only really get to test out the true real deal every 4 years at the Rugby World Cup, which again I like that. You've got a little bit held back, sort of once every 4 years you truly get everybody together, everybody's firing, everybody's on the same page. And we saw that last year, 2019. We really got to see how good the South was, how good the North was, and we found out some interesting results, right? Perhaps the All Blacks coming in as number 1 were not number 1, and Wales coming in as sort of like number 1 Europe, Six Nations Grand Slam champions. Well, they just were not really, were they? Or they were not by the end of the year. I think you'd have to say, obviously South Africa won it, and they won the Rugby Championship through the year, the shortened Rugby Championship through the year, so a great double for them. And then obviously England was very strong, powered straight through New Zealand in the semi-final. Didn't have enough to win the final, but was clearly the best Northern Hemisphere team. So we kind of found out the real truth rather than the rankings, right? And then don't get me started on Ireland. I believe they were actually ranked number 1 in the world going into the at the start of the Rugby World Cup tournament. And in hindsight, that's you'd have to say that was pretty ridiculous and or sort of disrespectful, or just a shambolic ranking system, because Ireland they didn't fire too many shots in that, and they certainly weren't anywhere near the top table as the tournament played out. But anyways, more ramble from me, but hopefully you like that a little bit. it's the reason why I do this, right? Is to, provide some comments and opinions, and, hopefully on things rugby, and, hopefully you like it, or hopefully it's a little bit new and fresh, or, interesting to you. But yeah, seriously now, let's get on to Six Nations future, because I've been seeing a number of reports, sort of leaked reports, coming out of English, relatively reputable English media sources. Not so much coming out of South Africa, but there's still some rumblings. And then, SANZAAR as a body is holding pretty strong and saying nothing's happening. But it does seem like the initial rumblings are out there that, South Africa could be in an expanded Seven Nations, as early as 2024. Now you have to temper that with the fact that broadcasting deals for SANZAAR, i.e. the Super Rugby and the Rugby Championship, go through to 2025. So South Africa would have to kind of buy themselves out of those broadcasting deals, and I don't really know if they've got the money or the will to kind of do that. So if they are going to go north, I think it might be later than 2024, basically just to honour agreements. There might be perhaps what would it be? Maybe you'd want to do it mid, so 2023 is the World Cup, so yeah, you might want to say 24, 25, stay in the south, and perhaps from 26, 27 onwards, like in the lead up to the next World Cup, or the 2027 World Cup, so 2 World Cups from now, you might want to have 2 years being in the Seven Nations, maybe 2 years after the 2023 World Cup, still in the Rugby Championship with transition and, announced we're leaving kind of, signposting, and then 2 years actually in the north before before we do the 2027, tournament. That would be my thinking if this actually does happen. I don't think 2024 is going to happen. I don't think they'll break their contract. I don't think it will be financially worthwhile to take that hit and then get the Northern Hemisphere hit. I think if you have these responsibilities and you've got to financially break them, and then you get these bigger incentives over here, you're essentially equaling yourself out with a lot of disruption. So yeah, that would be my pick. If South Africa does move, which I certainly think could happen, and maybe even should happen. I think you'll find from my comments that I'm gonna make soon that maybe I think it actually should happen, and I would actually be welcoming of it. But if they are to do it, I think it will be more likely after 2025. So yeah, I think 26 will be maybe the year that it becomes Seven Nations. And my thinking around that is that really Argentina should go with them too. Just based on like where they are in the world, and are they sort of Western Hemisphere or are they Eastern Hemisphere? Because I guess I'll get into the meat of it now. Like that for me, that's really where professional rugby right now is really the reality of professional rugby now. Is that there isn't really a northern southern hemisphere. There's really a Western and an Eastern Hemisphere. So by that I mean obviously, Australia, New Zealand, essentially, and Japan are in the East. A rising Japan potentially, hopefully, are in the East, and obviously the Pacific Islands too. So I mean that's Asia-Pacific is in the East. In the West, you have Europe and Africa at present, and then South America. Outside of Argentina, you don't really have a presence in North America or South America that's legit or at the top table. But South America and or Argentina is far more aligned with Africa and or Europe than it is with over the dateline East Asia or Asia Pacific. So I think that the true reality of where rugby is right now is really that there's a Western Hemisphere and an Eastern Hemisphere. And so a South African move to the Six Nations, to the north, as they say, really would be just a shift of East and West sort of aligning kind of properly. So yeah, what I'm going to do is I made a comment in a group, a fairly large sort of group called International Rugby. It's just a Facebook group, has like 50,000 people in it, something like that. I post these podcasts there from time to time, and I also make the occasional comment in there if I see something that I want to talk about or comment on. So I'm just going to read you out my comment. It's a little bit long, you know me, a little bit long-winded, but this one is written out. But I think it needs to be written out and thought about, and so that people don't just judge you straight off the bat and say, oh, well, you're just throw away, anti-South Africa or pro-New Zealand or whatever. It's like, no, I'm not that at all. And so, yeah, I'm just going to read you out what I did say in this international rugby group or forum, which got not too much response, to be honest. I was a little bit disappointed. I thought people might be able to take the time to read it and give me a little bit more riposte or comment, but it's got a few likes, nothing special. So here is the comment. Like I said, it's a little bit long, but please bear with me. I think it explains my thinking very clearly. So regarding Six Nations European move, good luck to South Africa. Argentina should probably be included in this too, otherwise it is a little short-sighted and greedy. If this is to happen, I think it would be excellent for the Asia-Pacific game. The Force from Perth are in exile and are still together playing. Keep the Sunwolves and create a Pacific Barbarians playing half their games in Singapore with their spiritual home in Fiji. Sunwolves can take a few games on the road inside Japan and or to Hong Kong. New Zealand, 5 teams plus a Fiji team or a Fiji-Singapore team. Australia, 5 teams plus a Japanese team. Back to Super 12, round robin 11 games, or even a 1.5 round system, 10 conference games, i.e. New Zealand plus Fiji, Australia plus Japan, so 10 conference games plus half the other conference every second year. That would give you 13 games plus a top 6 finals. So all of that is basically providing a Super Rugby alternative with South Africa and or the Jaguares gone. In 2030, you look to give Singapore a full team and either a 6th New Zealand team, a 2nd Japanese team, or a Hong Kong team. So expand it back out to a Super 14 in like 10 years from now. International competition. So this would provide international competition with a local Australia-New Zealand derby flavour. Bring Rugby Japan and a Pacific Rugby Federation firmly and legitimately inside an overhauled SANZA. SANZA to be replaced by JPANZ, JPANZ Rugby, or APR, Asia-Pacific Rugby. Australia, Japan, New Zealand, and the Pacific Lions, Fiji, Tonga, Samoa, a combined team, play the new Rugby Championship. Japan and Singapore, Hong Kong, China, have the money. New Zealand, the Pacific, and Australia have the talent and resources. Let's thank South Africa, apologise to Argentina, and push for their northern acceptance, and get on with locking up all the best talent with Japanese yen, to be released on the world yearly during November and every 4 years come Rugby World Cup time. Also, South Africa would now be able to tour in July, so regular 3-test All Black series, Wallabies series, etc., with midweek matches. That'd be pretty awesome, right? Let's go. Take the leadership, New Zealand Rugby, JPANZ, APR 2024. So that was my comment. Like I said, fairly long-winded with a little bit of added commentary from me there. But essentially, that was my comment in that forum. Once I heard that South Africa could well be moving, and it seems not completely conspiracy theory. It does seem to be based on some real talk at the executive level. So yeah, hopefully you can listen to me, or I might even link my link to that comment or post that comment in full in the show notes. But yeah, feel free with my timestamps that I'll put up later, to go back and just re-listen to me explain my thinking there. So yeah, for me, I think the reality really is that there's like I've said before, a Western Hemisphere, which is Europe and Africa, or Europe and South Africa, plus I guess Argentina and South America, and then there's an Eastern Hemisphere, which is Australia, New Zealand, the Pacific Islands, and Japan. And I think the thinking really needs to be a little bit more like that. It's more important to be in and around the same time zones professionally than it is to be playing in the winter or in the summer, or like in the spring, in the fall. That is nowhere near as relevant, for competitions as the travel factor of like moving. Just as my team, for example, the Hurricanes, has just started Super Rugby this year. Had to get out of Wellington, go up, play a pre-season game in Auckland, fly out of Auckland probably to Sydney, had to fly from Sydney to probably Johannesburg, Joburg to Cape Town, got destroyed in Cape Town, then had to get on a plane and go to Buenos Aires, and then got a last minute win there. That was great. And then it has to travel back in time basically, forward in time, because it has to go back over the date line, and loses time to actually come back home and play a round 3 home match against a South African team that's already in New Zealand for like 2 weeks. So I mean, look at that kind of travel. It's insane. That's quite a sensational, or that's quite a sensational example. But that's the sort of travel that the Southern Hemisphere puts itself through by having New Zealand, Australia, South Africa, Argentina all in the same house, right? You get no kind of travel like that if you're essentially just going up and down the time zones. Like you're keeping things very tight. New Zealand time zone going back to say Singapore/Perth is a 5-hour difference. In the summertime or summertime/fall or autumn, it's a 4-hour difference. If you look at Argentina, South Africa, and Europe, I mean, you're looking again at like 2, 3, 4-hour differences in time zone. So, those things just pair up like far better, and I think they really seriously need to be thought about and recognized by executives, but like top level management. And the new reality is like, okay, we're not really existing in this north-south thing anymore. We're really existing in this east-west thing. And so hopefully the competitions progress like that. For me, I'd love to see in 8 nations, retain Italy. That's subjective again. We'll see how they go over maybe the next 5 years. There really does need to be more improvement, but see how they go over the next 5 years. And I think you just got to stick with the project and hope for the best. But if you are bringing in South Africa, I think you also bring in Argentina, and then you've got an 8 nations, which gives you sort of symmetry, or gives you the ability to basically add 2 teams. So just add an extra game every round, right? I mean, it's going to make it 7-round competition, if everybody plays everybody. So that's going to be quite long, as opposed to the 5 that you currently have. But I think the tournament can certainly deal with that. It can, 7 rounds with perhaps, like it has at the moment, has 5 rounds with 2 buys, so it's a 7-week comp. I think you could quite easily have, 7 rounds with 2 buys and make it a 9-week comp, which is still only 2 months. That's pretty comparable to, what the Rugby Championship at present is, where, 4 teams play home and away, i.e. 6 games, with break time. I think bringing Argentina along with South Africa, it makes it a lot more legitimate, makes it a lot less selfish, a lot less sort of opportunistic, because I think South Africa has been down in the dumps a little bit over the last, say the last decade. Came into the last decade, 2010, it was still, 2007 World Cup champions, and it had a very strong Bulls team in Super Rugby. So around 2010, came into the decade pretty strong, but it fell off pretty quickly and was, sort of down in the dumps quite early in the decade, all the way through until last year. So it's been well off the pace compared to New Zealand in general, and has even been off the pace, compared to Australia in the south, and to a number of different teams in the north. So it is a little bit opportunistic that they've sort of just slightly, they've bumped up for, half a year, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, we want to jump ship and go play where the money is. So like, okay, well, I don't really feel like, the back-to-back World Cup champion All Blacks, used their 2011, 2015 World Cup wins to, change, SANZAAR favourably to New Zealand. Like, they didn't bring in a 6th New Zealand Super Rugby team, which they probably could and maybe should have if there was that kind of expansion going on. They didn't make Sansa more New Zealand centric, or they didn't break away from Sansa and do things with Japan. Well, they did in a very limited, or they have in a very limited way, but certainly nothing that has superseded Sansa. And so I feel like it is a little bit opportunistic from South Africa if they just basically push for themselves to be included. I think they need to take Argentina with them, and I think Sansa needs to give South Africa and Argentina their blessing and just basically reorientate to the east, to Asia-Pacific, and say, all right, we start with 12, 5 New Zealand, 5 Australian, we get the force back in there, we retain the Sunwolves, and really work with Japanese rugby to make the Sunwolves a very good team, based on their club level, which is kind of competing with it, and perhaps we could get it to not compete so much and actually be like feeder teams to a Sunwolves team, and actually make it a very good team, from Japanese talent but also international talent in Japan. And then we provide one more team. Where do we go? Well, we do a little bit of expansion to Singapore. Like Singapore already has the Sevens. Singapore already plays some Sunwolves Super Rugby matches or hosts, so we give them some expansion. But really, the spiritual home of our expansion team would be Fiji, would be Suva, where they've shown really great crowds over many years. When New Zealand teams have gone there and taken home games to Suva, they've shown great support, and it's been a lot of fun and very interesting, good games. So you have a Fiji-based team, you retain the Sunwolves, you get the force back to make up 5 Australian teams, and you keep the 5 New Zealand teams, and so boom, there's 12 teams. It's back to Super Rugby, it's back to Super 12 for Super Rugby, and then you have some Sunwolves travel inside of Japan to make it a little bit more of a national team, or like a regional team, not just a Tokyo team, and you have perhaps the Fiji team split between depending on how many home games you have, maybe it's 5, maybe it's 6, maybe it's 7. You basically play half of those games, or 4 of those, whatever's half or slightly more than half, you play in Suva, and then you give the slightly less than half of those games or half of those games to Singapore. That way you're keeping a lot of Asia-Pacific rugby in the loop, in the legitimate Super Rugby loop. You play that out for 4 or 5 years to 2030, and then you reassess. Hopefully you can give Singapore a complete standalone team. Hopefully you can give Japan a complete second standalone team, something based out of another rugby place in Japan, so away from Tokyo. Have 2 Japanese teams. I think that'd be great for rivalry. I think Japan would love that kind of double Japanese team derby style. And then boom, you've got 3 Asian teams, obviously filled with a fair amount of Pacific Island talent, Australia, New Zealand talent, world talent. But you've also then you've got 5 teams from Australia, 5 teams from New Zealand, and a standalone Pacific team based out of Suva. Or if things don't go that well, maybe you just give New Zealand a 6th Super Rugby team, which I'm sure that they could do, or I'm sure that they could handle. But that 6th Super Rugby team, I'll talk about that at a different time, in terms of where that could come or where that could be based in New Zealand. But I do believe we actually do have the interest and talent and the money, basically the rugby money, to provide a 6th team if needed in the competition. But it would be more of a plan B. I think 5 teams in New Zealand is pretty good. So that's my thinking. My thinking is east and west. It's not north and south. I think what can you say? Longitude and time zones trump latitude in terms of what's reality and what's good for players and what's good for competitions, what's good for audiences. Like I've said, best of luck to South Africa. I think it would be certainly not bad for them to be involved in the 8 nations or the current 6 nations. But I think you definitely have to leave Sansa completely. If you do that, I don't think you can be in Super Rugby, have basically a foot in both camps. I think Sansa needs to basically dissolve and wrap up and be reinvented as a Asia-Pacific Rugby authority, and I think South Africa would have to along with the Jaguares and Argentinian rugby, have to pivot and push for northern acceptance and play in northern hemisphere competitions, and or just play something based out of South Africa. Perhaps you could have, if you had the Cheetahs and Kings, who are still in existence and playing in the Pro 14, if you had them come back to South Africa, well, then you've got 6 old Super Rugby teams. Perhaps you can give Argentina a second sort of Super Rugby level team, or even a rising power like Brazil might even get a franchise expansion team. Maybe a little bit too much of a stretch, but if you did that, you've got 8 teams. Of those, 2 teams in South America, 6 in Africa. If everybody played each other home and away, that's a 14-round comp right there, which would be very interesting and very good. And yeah, you don't really need to rely or play in the depths of, English winter or, European winter. You could play that concurrently with, European competitions, club competitions, and then obviously everybody frees up their schedule to allow, a 2-month 8 nations competition. So yeah, lots of different things that could happen, lots of positive things that could happen. But yeah, I do see basically a 6 nations being expanded to 8, and sort of like thinking of it as a Western Hemisphere, the Rugby Championship becoming an Asia-Pacific, an Eastern Hemisphere competition, and again, basically based on Australia and New Zealand, or New Zealand and Australia, plus Japan, plus a Pacific Lions team. So a Pacific team that would play as essentially a Pacific All-Stars. It would be probably, again, based out of Suva. Could maybe take a game here or there on the road to Tonga, or a game here or there on the road to Samoa, but essentially you base it out of Suva for home games. And it's basically a combination, of Fiji, Tonga and Samoa, much like you do, say, with West Indies in cricket. It's the exact same, situation. So yeah, I think those 2 competitions, or those 2 international competitions, would be awesome. And I think either having 2 sort of big club level competitions, or even 3 big level club competitions, i.e. like European club competitions, a South American, African club competition split away from Super Rugby, and then Super Rugby still in existence as an Asia-Pacific club level competition. I think that would be also great for rugby. So yeah, there you go. That's my thoughts on South Africa and what they might be thinking of doing, and what they might be kind of signposting and leaking into the media for 2024. But like I've said, maybe more like 2025, 2026. But all I can say is I have absolutely no hard feelings there. If that is what they're trying to do, best of luck to them. But I just hope you take Argentina with you. Show some principle there, and make it work. Make the 8 nations a really, really interesting international competition, a really good high level competition, and then basically leave Australia and New Zealand to grow the Asia Pacific game along with Japan and the Pacific Islands. And let's see who else we can bring into that fold. Maybe we can get Hong Kong a little bit more up to play. Maybe we can get the likes of Singapore and China and Korea more up to play, more up to speed, and like a B competition. So yeah, that's that. Hopefully you enjoyed those thoughts. Hopefully they were a little bit out of the box, maybe something you hadn't thought about, and maybe something that you like, something that you can get on board with and agree with or disagree with, and let me know. So yeah, like I said before, please subscribe on YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. That'd be awesome. Find me on Facebook at the Rugby Gods Podcast. Should do the job. Should be able to find my little Facebook page there and give me a like. That'd be awesome. And more importantly, give me a comment, or send me an email. Both of those are great things to do, and I love receiving that. And yeah, just a couple of one really quick shout out. I've been putting my podcast into a number, or 4 or 5 different groups of people, primarily Taiwan groups. So like sort of foreigner groups or expat groups inside of Taiwan where there might be interest in talking or listening to things rugby. So I've been doing that, and I've also, like I said, been posting into International Rugby, which is basically a rugby-centric Facebook group, International Rugby-centric Facebook group with about 50,000 people. So basically just trying to build awareness of what I'm doing here, obviously trying to get followers, trying to get likes, trying to get people to subscribe. But yeah, one of the groups that I've been posting to, which is called, that's actually very important, right? Because I'm basically shouting them out, so I better get their name right. So I'm just going to quickly look them up. They've asked me to, if I am to post into their group, then I should give them a little bit of acknowledgement, i.e. the fact that they're allowing me to, post to, I think it's something like 25,000 people in their group, and it's sort of Taiwan based, so it's pretty useful, pretty good for me. They basically want me to give them a shout out, and I've stupidly not got their Facebook group up, so that I can't exactly give you their official name, which is what I'm actually supposed to do, right? So yeah, just bear with me. Super slow, super stupid computer is bringing it up. The name is pretty generic. You guys, most of you in the world probably don't care, but this is something that I should do, or I need to do, because I'm based in Taiwan, based in Taipei. So yeah, the group that I'm giving a shout out to, and thank you very much for allowing me, I believe it's Karen Williamson, one of the administrators. Thank you very much for allowing me into your group to post there. It's Foreigners Society in Taiwan. So if you look up Foreigners Society in Taiwan on Facebook, basically, yeah, you can join that group to see what they talk about, if it's relevant to you, if you're in Taiwan, or you're coming to Taiwan, or you're just I don't know, if you just want to look them up and see what the hell is he talking about. Basically, yeah, it's got like 20,000 plus members in it, and they're really helpful, or they've been really helpful lately in allowing me to essentially promote myself or promote this podcast inside of their group. So again, thank you very much to Karen and the other administrators of that group. Yeah, and also, yeah, thanks to International Rugby, because you allow me to put my YouTube links into your group of sort of 50,000 people all around the world, and I have managed to have some interesting likes, a few interesting comments from people in places like Georgia and Albania, it's like Eastern European countries that I certainly don't know personally, and even some people from the UK and Ireland, and yeah, so I've been able to get some people on board, or talk to some people, or get my podcast in front of some people that I never really would have been able to do if I wasn't in these sort of international group forums. So yeah, thank you very much to, one more time there, very, very sorry, Foreigners Society in Taiwan, thank you very much. And like I said, also thank you very much to International Rugby. Those are two big groups for me. They help me get these podcasts out to people. So cheers, thanks for that. Going to sign off. As usual, made it a little bit longer than I wanted. Kind of wanted it to be 40-45 minutes. It's going on 55, and I've got to kind of scoot and do some real life, real job, real stuff. So yeah, it's a Wednesday, right? So hope you're having a great week. Yeah, hopefully you enjoyed my thoughts there. A little bit of review, and then just what do I think about South Africa? Maybe going north, or in my world, maybe staying in the Western Hemisphere and saying goodbye to the Eastern Hemisphere. Hopefully you enjoyed those thoughts. So yeah, signing off. Ka kite anō. Enjoy your rugby. I'll see you again. Thank you very much. Bye bye.